Oh, hi, Colin. Hi, Colin. Can you hear me okay, Colin?
Yes, took a bit of trouble getting on, but I'm on now.
Oh, yeah, bang on time as well. You had a nice day?
Not really all that good. I had my booster earlier today, and it was very, very crowded because they allowed people who hadn't made appointments to just come along on spec, which was a bit unfair on people who'd made appointments because they were all allowed to join the queue. So it was a long queue of people waiting for it. I felt that people who'd booked weeks ago should have been given priority over people who just decided to come along and you know, take pot luck.
That's right. Yeah. Because I went for my booster a few weeks ago. I went in the evening. I went about 7 o'clock, and that wasn't too bad. Because I work in a care company, I can just sort of turn up, and I think it was a good time to go really. But
yeah.
Okay, so just waiting for. We've got a couple of people in the audience tonight, so I'm just waiting for one more to join, then we can sort of make a start.
Okay.
Okay.
You may hear odd noises because the dogs are very active tonight. And Lottie needs her ball to be thrown every now and again. So if you see me doing that, it's because I'm throwing a ball over my head.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Well, I'm just going to see if I've got any emails to say anybody's having trouble logging on. No, I don't think so. So I think we can probably make a start, Colin. Okay. So the first question I had, Colin, was how did you get into the world of film and TV in the first place?
Well, I didn't have a sort of childhood ambition to be a stuntman. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, in all honesty, and then I came up to London, thought I would end up teaching the sports that I, was interested in, which was diving, gymnastics, swimming, and martial arts. And then I was asked if I might be interested in doing some stunt work by an agency. So that was how it started off. That was long before there was a proper stunt register. So I initially got work through this agent and another couple of agents. And then in 1972, the stunt register was formed, and all those people who were currently working with stunt men at that time were invited to join. And then it really took off for me because I was one of the youngest ones, and I was a gymnast and acrobat and very fit. And that was how it started. And I still kept the teaching, private coaching going for a while. And then I divorced a stage show called The Four Musketeers with Harry Seacombe. And that ran for 15 months because of the hours of the stage show. It meant that I had to stop the private coaching because the hours clashed. So that from 72 onwards, I became a full-time stuntman.
Oh, lovely, yeah. And did you enjoy doing the live theatre and the live shows? Was that
very much? It was great fun doing live theatre. Yeah. In fact, I did that before. Hang on, there's something come up asking me to accept cookies. So I think about it. Hello, have you?
I'm still here. You still got? You can still see me?
I don't know what's happened here.
Can you still hear me? Okay, Colin?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can. Hang on, what's on here? Well, now I can't see you at all.
Oh, if you at the top of Zoom, you've got. Can you see yourself talking?
No, it's all gone. There's something. The sales team come up. Click to call.
You might have minimalized Zoom. Is there a Zoom icon at the bottom of your screen, along the bottom bar?
There's a. Hang on, what's this?
Like a little camera.
Chat with bot. There's a thing. No, there's not. It's just
No?
invaded support. Crystal clear audio, even if lingo is learn more.
Is there an X on the right hand side of that to get out of that one?
Hang on, I'll try it. No, it's not allowing me to do that.
Just trying to think, really.
Is it worth going out of it and coming back in, do you think?
Yeah, could you? Yeah, can you? Do you have the end button on your? Can you actually see anything on Zoom that you can come out of?
No, I just pressed this thing here.
Yeah.
Right, it's gone now. Right, click here to join. I'll try that again.
Yeah.
Join new meeting. Leave and join.
Sorry about this, everyone. We'll get Colin back in a second. There we are. Can you see me okay now?
Yeah, I can see you again now, and I'm back at the top. I don't know what that thing decided to suddenly invade my screen.
It's annoying when that happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Should we do a take two then? Should we just go good? So if we go back, so we just sort of start again. So the first question I would like to ask you, Colin, is what interested you in going into the world of stunts, and how did it come about?
Well, I was always very keen on dangerous things and cars and motorcycles as a kid, and I initially went to PE college, but I realised that teaching at school wasn't what I wanted to do, so I did a lot of private coaching, and then somebody suggested that because of my skills, that stunt work might be a good way of supplementing my income. Mm-hmm. So that was how I started off, with a couple of agents. The agency initially gave me work, and then I did a stage show, The Four Musketeers, with Harry Seacombe, which was 15 months of work. Mm-hmm. And that was how it started. And when the Stunt Register proper was formed in 1972, everybody who was currently working as a stunt performer was entitled to join that. And because I was one of the younger, fitter ones, I immediately started to get a lot of work, and that was how it took off for me.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of your first roles was a film, well, the first jobs was a Dandy in Aspect. Do you remember?
Dandy in Aspect, yes. Lawrence Harvey starred in that, and he was also the director. And I played a character who got, why they wanted a stuntman to play it was because he was supposed to be a top professional diver, springboard diver, and I can remember my demise was when I was shot in the swimming pool and had to somersault through the air and crash into the water. And then that was one of my very first jobs. I did a couple of diving commercials before that, springboard diving and highboard diving, but that was probably my first feature film. Yes.
Because the director, I believe the original director of that film died halfway through shooting, and Lawrence Harvey had to come into, to the director's chair. Were you aware of that at the time, or?
Yes, I think that yes. I think that I didn't come in until Lawrence Harvey was already on board. Yes, I don't know what happened to the original director.
Just for your knowledge, Colin, and for anybody that's interested in watching along, it's a gentleman called Anthony Mann who was the original director of that.
Oh yes,
he unfortunately had a heart attack, and that was it.
That was why, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't work on it with him. I think I came in when Lawrence Harvey was already on board.
I think the next of your projects that I think people will find quite interesting is Blood from the Mummy's Tomb, the classic Hammer horror film.
Yes, that was. I did quite a few Hammer horrors based up at Elstree Studios. I can't recall. I know I did a couple of stunts I did. I think I doubled an actress called Valerie Leon.
Oh yeah.
And I had to go back through this window. And it was a big window with lots of sort of trellises on it. And they didn't weaken them off quite enough. I can remember the first time I went for the stunt, I got stuck in the framework. I didn't go all the way through. So
Right.
they reset and weakened it a little bit, and then it worked fine the second time. But it was quite funny being sort of suspended halfway through the window and not being able to get all the way through it.
Yeah.
And also, I think I doubled somebody called Aubrey Morris in that as well. But that, so that was, I'm not sure what other stars were in that one, come to think of it.
Yeah, my memory's a little bit foggy on that one, but I think it was certainly for Valerie Leon, because she went on to do a couple of Bond films and worked for Roger Moore. So it was quite a big film for her, certainly. And then of course Bond came into your world with Live and Let Die. So
yes, again, that was quite a number of years later. Live and Let Die, and also The Spy That Loved Me. I was on that quite a long period of time on that, because we were shooting that at Pinewood Studios.
Yeah.
Live and Let Die. I think that was the first Roger Moore one, if I remember right.
It was indeed, yes.
And I did bits and pieces on that. I also doubled Gloria Hendry, believe it or not.
Right, yes.
It's not politically correct these days for a man to double a woman, but it didn't matter then.
Yeah,
And because there weren't very many stunt girls, if any at all, back then, because I was of slight build and fairly short, I did get quite a lot of work doubling women. I doubled, for example, Joanna Lumley. I did all her stunts on the New Avengers.
All right, yeah.
Most of which involved motorcycling. So yes, these days it more or less has to be a woman to do a woman's stunt, and also it's frowned upon for a white man to double somebody of colour, whereas in those days it didn't matter.
Yeah, because I remember talking to Sid Child fairly recently, and she doubled Fiona Rigg and Joanna Lumley in the Avengers, and she was saying that when she started,
I think Sid Child did. I think she doubled Diana Rigg on the Avengers.
Yeah.
The new Avengers that I did, and that was where I doubled Joanna Lumley.
Yeah.
There were lots of different other stunts on the new Avengers as well. I can't remember the name of many of the episodes. One was The Tale of the Big Y, because I remember that one because I had to do a motorcycle crash.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Diana, and the farmer who was renting us the land or the field waited till we'd shot a huge amount of the sequence and suddenly decided to try and blackmail the company into stopping shooting, and which would have meant in shooting it entirely from a a different location. And I know that the company had to go to him and try and sweet talk him into allowing it to continue, and I know there was a lot of money involved in that.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the director, but to say that was mostly doubling Joanna on that one.
Yeah. Because by that time Sid was the fighter ranger, so she wasn't doing much of the actual stunt work. Do you remember a director called Ray Austin by any chance?
Yes, I do. Ray Austin was a stuntman before he became a director. He went to Hollywood and started directing there. I never actually worked with Ray Austin, but no, he was somebody I knew of.
Because Ray's done a few of my Avengers events, you see. So he's a really great guy. So I was just as we're touching on fellow stunt performers, do you have particular favourite people that you've worked with in your career that you've enjoyed, or I see as persons on the list? Do you have sort of people that you prefer to work with stunt wise?
I mean, I've never given it too much thought. I was happy to work with anybody, but obviously once I started to coordinate and everything, I had my own team of people that I wanted to have around me.
Yeah.
It's the same in any field. You want people that you can get on with as well as who are good at the job. So I had quite a team about me then. Of course, in my early days, I was just a stunt performer, and I was part of other people's teams.
Yeah. Because I think one of my favourite stunt people is a guy called Roy Scammell.
Roy died recently.
Yes, I was very sad to hear that. Yeah.
Yes, he was a great friend and colleague, and I did a lot of stuff with him in the early days. And we socialised together quite a lot. Yes, he was a loss. Bad loss, not that long ago.
No, not at all. And people like Paul Weston and Vic Armstrong, big sort of.
Yes, I'm still in touch with them. They're still good friends, and Vic particularly.
Oh, good, lovely. Because I had the pleasure to meet Roy at a couple of events, and Vic and Paul as well. So yeah, they're all really wonderful gentlemen. So when you moved on to Spy Who Loved Me, was it mostly stuff in the oil tanker?
Yeah, yes, that's right. It was set, the submarine set on the bomb stage at Pinewood. There was weeks and weeks of that. There's also a couple of motorcycle things that I did on that too. I remember. I can't remember where we went to. Malta. I think it was probably Malta.
Yeah.
Went out there for a short while, but I'd say most of my involvement was at Pinewood Studios. There was quite a stunt team there.
Would it have been the bit in Malta? Would it have been the motorcycle and the sidecar that you?
Yeah, the motorcycle and sidecar and the Lotus.
Yeah.
And sending it off the cliff into the sea.
Yeah. Because that's a very memorable sequence. That was one of my favourites.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it like seeing the set at Pinewood Studios? Because it was probably one of the biggest sets ever.
Yes, of course, the stage was actually built for that scene. I mean, they're going now and they're still using it for the big stunt scenes, but it was actually built initially for the submarine set. And yes, it was very impressive. I know we had issue with fire. I think we had a problem with fire at one stage.
Yeah.
But it was enjoyable working there.
I mean, when it comes to type of stunts, you probably may have preference for water-based stunts because of your.
Well, not really. I mean, I'm not a great lover of water, but mostly because in a lot of occasions, stuntmen were used for cold water sequences because extras or actors wouldn't want to submit to extreme cold temperatures for great lengths of time. And of course, yes, you did it as a stuntman, but I can't say that spending all day in cold water was anything like a favourite stunt at all. I prefer physical things and car and motorcycle stunts. Yes, it was all part of it. And I know in some of the later Bonds, there were scenes in the tank with a couple of them with not Pierce Brosnan, Timothy Dalton. When Timothy Dalton played Bond, they did a couple there where we were sort of going into cold water tanks and that sort of thing.
And I did notice on your credits on IMDb, which is not always reliable, but you're credited as working on the Persuaders with Roger Moore and Tony Curtis. Is that Was that something?
No, I actually worked on a series at the same time called The Protectors, which had a very similar name, and that starred Nari Dawn Porter and Robert Vaughn and the guy who played in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Can't remember his name there.
Yes, well, Robert Vaughn was in Man from U.N.C.L.E. I'm trying to think who the other.
Yeah, I can see his picture now. He played a character called Ilya Kuliarkin.
Dave McCullum.
That's right, yes. But no, I didn't. The Persuaders was not correct because people so often confuse the Protectors and the Persuaders. They were both of them were made out of EMI Studios at about the same sort of time.
Yeah.
Tony Curtis and Roger Moore were in the Persuaders.
Yeah, because it was Tony Anholt who was the second male lead in the.
That's right, I remember him.
Yeah. So did you ever work with Dave McCullum?
Only once. I can't think that because I was quite a good double for him. I was trying to think what it was on.
Would it be Sapphire and Steel or something like that, or?
No, I'm afraid it escapes me. I only did one thing doubling him. I can't remember what it was. Sorry.
That's okay. And was The Protectors quite a good show to work on?
Yeah, it was good fun. Yes, it was run of the mill sort of detective type thing, secret agent type things.
Yeah.
I don't think it was quite as successful as The Persuaders, but then it didn't have the stars that I'd say Roger Moore and Tony Curtis were bigger stars than the people we had on the Protectors.
Yeah, and I think the Protectors was quite interesting because it was a half-hour show rather than the 50 minutes that the Persuaders had, and maybe that just meant that the stories weren't perhaps couldn't develop as much perhaps in that format.
Yeah.
I'd like to move on to Star Wars. So the first Star Wars film. Again, you've got an acting role and also stunt work in there too. What are your memories of Star Wars?
Well, my original memory was that Peter Diamond, the stunt coordinator, rang me up and said, "Was I interested in doing this low-budget science fiction movie, mostly a children's movie? So there's a 12-week shoot if you're interested." And I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll do it." He said, "There's a bit of doubling of the star and also a lot of stuff playing stormtroopers being shot and falling and being blown up and that kind of thing." So at the time we had no idea it would turn into what it became.
No.
At the end, when my stint in that was up, I never gave it any thought that I would be asked back 3 years later to do a much bigger production, which was The Empire Strikes Back, and I was on that for about 9 months. And then the same with Return of the Jedi, which was again about a 9-month shoot. And of course, they were 3 years apart, so that we shot Star Wars in 1976. Empire Strikes Back was in 1979, and Return of the Jedi was in 1982.
Sorry, Colin?
I was just saying they were all great fun to work on, particularly the bigger two.
Yeah, of course. So how did it come about that you doubled for Mark Hamill? Was it again just a good fit, a natural choice?
Yes, Peter Diamond thought it was a lot of physical skills involved, acrobatic type things, which were one of my specialities, and the fact that I was a good size double for him. So that was why I was picked for the role.
And when it comes to be a successful double, is it more just a case of having the physicality, or do you?
It's a combination of being made to be able to look as much like them as possible, so they can use you as much as possible. So you had to be a physical shape and size very similar to the actor, but of course also you had to be capable of doing what the script called for you to be able to do.
Hmm.
So that was the two main reasons why I was chosen.
I mean, Peter Diamond is very much a legend to film and TV fans, and in the stunt world. Do you have maybe a couple of memories of Peter that you might like to share in terms of what kind of man he was like?
I first worked with him on a film called One of Our Dinosaurs is Missing, which he coordinated. That was probably about 1974. I was immediately struck by what a nice man he was. I can remember because he's very much a family man. He lived in, I think it was somewhere in Yorkshire, Wakefield maybe, or something like that. And he was travelling to and from Pinewood Studios every day so he could go back to his family. And I was pretty impressed by that rather than staying in a hotel. And it was the start of a long association with him, because having worked on that movie with him, although I did run him down on a motorcycle once when he was on a cycle, which was not planned. I was doubling, it was on One of Our Dinosaurs is Missing, I was doubling an actress called Joan Sims.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I'll be with you in a second. I'll just do it.
No problem.
Neil, it's Colin. I'm doing a Zoom Star Wars thing at the moment. Can I ring you back? All right, mate. Take care. Take care. Bye. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yes. So, is there anything else you want to mention about Peter Diamond before we move on, or?
Well, I worked with him on all 3 Star Wars movies when we went to America. He came out there. Just, my memory of him was just such a nice man, and also, a very competent stunt coordinator as well.
And when you went on to The Empire Strikes Back, obviously a very different film, bigger budget, and I believe you were on the Norway location as well. Was that
yes, I went to, Peter didn't come on that because he didn't like the go on there in the cold. So he sent me and Bob Anderson out there to do the stunt stuff. And even Bob decided after a while that the cold was too much for him and asked Peter if he could come back and work in the studio. So I stayed out there on my own,
right,
doing the helicopter stunts and that kind of thing. Very cold.
And how much involvement would you have with the directors, say Irving Kershner on Empire? Did you have much contact, or was it more sort of?
Oh yes, no, quite a lot of contact, because you're the hands-on director, and obviously when we were in Norway, he was with the first unit and he went back. When the second unit came out there, and I don't think who the second unit director was now. No, I can't recall, but Irving Kershner didn't stay out there once the stars had finished their involvement.
And how was it different working with him, say George Lucas?
Well, they were very different characters. I mean, George Lucas was very quiet, always very reserved, and it wasn't always easy to know what he wanted because he didn't communicate so well as Irving Kershner.
Right.
And I think he was happier doing a sort of background role rather than actually directing it, because he didn't direct any of the others.
Yeah, I've always found that George Lucas was a bit more suited to being, coming up with the stories, the special effects, the sort of putting it all together, perhaps more than the directing side of it.
Yeah.
So what was some of your favourite stunts on Empire Strikes Back, or maybe just favourite memories of
Well, probably the one that stands out is that they built this set where Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker are fighting, and Darth Vader throws this object at this big window, which crashes the window out and sucks everything out, including Luke Skywalker. Yeah. And they were talking about building a rig for me to do that on. I said, I don't need a rig, I can do it for real.
Right.
So I combined a couple of gymnastic moves to do it as a sort of a somersault through the air out the window and then crashing down onto the boxes. And it was very satisfying that I saved them several days of building rigs by doing it for real.
Yeah.
Of course, in those days, stunts were done for real. It wasn't CGI like it is now, so that what you saw was what you got. Whereas today, so much of it is CGI, and it's quite depressing in a way that people are now watching movies saying, "Oh, I bet that wasn't done for real. I bet that's CGI." Whereas back then, what you saw actually took place.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's very few films that do their own stunt work. I think the Bond films are a good example where they have the philosophy of we'll do it for real. But as you say, these days you're always wondering, is it real? Is it CGI? There's lots of photo replacements, so it looks like the actor, even though it's a stuntman. So that kind of perhaps works.
Yes, it's a lot. As I say, it rather diminishes
Hmm.
the role of the stuntman if you think that your image is being superimposed rather than you doing it as a stunt double. You know, but I figure that I was in it during the best years. My career was from the late 1960s through to about 10 years ago when I first got ill with a Lyme disease. And my last role in the industry over a great number of years was as stunt coordinator on Midsummer Murders.
Oh yeah, yeah. And was that a nice swan song for you?
That was a brilliant one for me because it meant I could live at home, commute on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And then on most days I could take the dogs to work because we were always out in country locations. And it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
I mean, how did you make the transition initially from a stuntman to stunt coordinator, stunt arranger?
Well, it happened not necessarily by design, it happens by circumstance. People who have used you as a performer, looking for a stunt coordinator. I think one of the first big movies that I stunt coordinated was with Robert Powell in 39 Steps.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that one. Vic Armstrong gave me that one because I think he was asked to do it, but he was engaged with something else, so he recommended me. So I took on that role. And once you start as a co-coordinator and you get a reputation, then the work continues to come in.
Oh, yeah, of course. We haven't touched on the Return of the Jedi. Was that as good experience as Empire? I believe that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, especially our time in the States. On that, there's about 7 or 8 weeks out there. We were in Yuma, Arizona, in the desert, and then Crescent City, California, in the giant redwood forests, and then latterly back at the George Lucas's studios in San Francisco. Those are the locations, all lovely locations. And I really enjoyed that part of it.
Oh, good. Because it was a different director again, wasn't it? It was Ralph Marcade or how to pronounce that.
What was his? I'm trying to think.
Oh, so Richard Marquand, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Marquand, yes, that's right. Yes, yeah.
And I got the what I've read as a Star Wars fan, I hear that Richard and George Lucas weren't necessarily seeing eye to eye, but I doubt that you would perhaps have picked up on that.
Yes, I wasn't involved in the political goings on there, but yes, I think there were issues with the way Jules wanted it shot and the way it was actually being shot. I'm not sure whether Gary Kurtz was involved in that much at the time. I think not.
I think Gary Kurtz wasn't involved with Jedi. I think he left for, I think there's script issues or something. So Gary walked away from Jedi. So I think it was one of the casualties of a difficult production.
Yeah. Yes, we didn't get involved with the politics of it. We just went along with what was decided.
Because Gary unfortunately died too young. Do you remember Gary Kurtz?
Yes, he did. I think probably a year or so ago, a couple of years maybe, he died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think it also there's a producer called Jim Bloom. Do you remember Jim Bloom at all?
Yes, I remember Jim. Yeah, yeah. Yes, he wasn't involved so much with the shooting.
Yeah.
Putting it all together, I think he was involved in that. But yeah, I do remember Jim. Yeah.
Good. I have some audience questions. I'll just interject with. I have a question. How do you balance doing the stunts that the script requires with health and safety issues? So that maybe was something that you counted perhaps a bit more later on in your career.
Yes, mostly health and safety kept out of our places. They weren't involved with us unless you were to work for the BBC or something like that. Yes, more and more as time went on, you had to justify what you were doing to them, and unfortunately, we didn't always see eye to eye with the health and safety people who would often sort of put in their buttons worth, as it were.
Yeah.
But generally, we were responsible for our own safety, and that of the actors was our responsibility.
I mean, were you protected as much back then in terms of insurance and?
Not very well initially, because we used to have what's called blood chits. You would sign something absolving the company from any liability.
Right.
Should you get injured. It was known as a blood chit. But I say that was really before health and safety got involved very much.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of dangerous stunts, did the stuntmen like to do the dangerous ones? Because I take it they were the more money, the more risk, the more.
With danger levels, you got paid what was called a stunt adjustment. You got so much per stunt for a dangerous one every time you did it. I did a film called Condor Man, for example, with Michael Crawford. And I had to double him flying under a helicopter and a crane with his huge wings on. And in those days, because there was no CGI, we had to use piano wire, which was quite dicey because they would often break under load. Whereas today you can use 3 or 4 mil cable and they just hide the cable. But then the wires had to be that thin that they couldn't be seen by the camera.
Yeah.
So and I can remember, I can't remember the name of the director, Tony Squires, I think, was the second unit director on Condor Man. We shot this sequence with me flying off the Eiffel Tower. We shot it 12 times in the morning, and I got a good stunt adjustment for every time. And then we went for lunch, and then he said the lights got better now. I want to shoot it all again from the other side.
Right.
So we did it all again, which was great for me because every time I did it, I got a good extra payment on top.
Yeah.
That was a good. I really enjoyed that film because we were in Zermatt in the Alps for a while, Monte Carlo and Paris were the locations for that.
Oh, yeah, well, wonderful. And you mentioned wire work. So were you involved in the wire work in Superman 2 and 3?
Yes, I did a quite fair bit. I know I did Superman's first flight because they wanted a light, agile person for that. So yes, did a lot of wire work, and obviously wire work on the Star Wars movies, dubbing Mark Hamill. Yeah.
So you referred to the Superman first flight. That was Superman the movie, I take it, when he first.
Yeah, the first movie. It was quite confusing because they shot Superman 1, 2, and 3 not necessarily in sequence. So we were. I'm trying to think. I went to Canada on one of them. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Superman 3.
Yeah.
Paul Weston was the stunt coordinator on that.
Oh yeah, that was number 3. Yeah.
And then there was Supergirl, which Alf Joint was the stunt coordinator on, and that was a little bit later on.
I mean, what's your memories of Superman 3 in particular? Because it's quite a different tone. It's very comedic. It's separate to the other.
Yes, I'd say most of the work I did on it was in Calgary in Alberta.
Yeah.
I doubled the actor who played Jimmy Olsen,
Yeah.
going up a ladder and a fireball explodes and have to fall off the ladder. And there were lots of other different stunts involving groups of us. I think there were about 12 of us out there in Calgary.
And would you be involved in the opening slapstick sequence? There's lots of people on roller skates and all sorts of chaos happening. Would you have done?
Yes, I did some of that. I'm trying to think what I did on that. Yeah, it was a big opening sequence and lots of people crashing around. Yeah.
And I think you had an acting role in Superman the movie in the you're one of the Air Force One.
A bartender who got attacked by Christopher Reeve playing his alter ego.
Yes.
I think he threw stuff at me behind the bar, if I remember rightly.
Yeah. And did you get to talk to Christopher Reeve? What was the impression of him?
Yeah, no, he was a nice man, very nice. Yeah. It was a tragedy the way he had this accident years later, from which he ultimately died.
Yeah.
But no, he was a nice, genuine guy.
And how about Richard? Did you have anything to do with Richard Pryor on Free?
No, I didn't do anything with him.
Because I think his stunt work was quite limited. I think partly because of his he had quite some bad burns from an accident, and I think it meant that he was quite limited in what he could do, physically with harnesses and stuff like that.
Yes, I think Clive Curtis, the Black Stuntman, doubled him on one part of it, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. So do you remember much about Superman 2? Because there was this very big battle in Metropolis, and do you remember that epic battle in Superman 2?
I don't know how much of that I was involved with. I don't recall it particularly well. Yes, no, I can't help with that.
That's okay. But you did work on the. So how did the role as the pilot come about on Superman the movie? Was it just
it was. I don't know why I was chosen. I'd done a bit of helicopter work with Mark Wolf, a top helicopter guy who worked on the Star Wars sequences. He did the helicopter stuff. But he dumped me in the snow several times in Norway. So they decided a stuntman should play the part because they had a full-size mock-up of a helicopter on wires, and they had to drop it on top of the building.
Yeah.
They built the set at Pinewood Studios, and there was quite a lot of hanging on wires and that sort of thing. Then Lois Lane is rescued, I think, by Superman.
Yeah.
And that was quite a few weeks doing that at Pinewood.
And was that another film like Star Wars that you were surprised by the success that it had?
Not so much so, because it was a big budget movie. I expected that to have been a success. Like Star Wars, which we didn't expect it to take off like it is. Fun enough these days when I do signings and conventions and that sort of thing, it's always Star Wars that stands out in people's minds, the original trilogy.
Yeah. Do you find that your involvement in Star Wars perhaps dwarfs some of your other work, and is that sometimes frustrating, or was it just nice to be appreciated for whatever it may be?
Sorry, could you repeat that bit?
Oh, I was just saying that do you find that most of the attention that you have from fans is for Star Wars, and if so, does it draw?
Yes, rather, probably because of the way people feel about those movies. That's probably the greatest interest.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of other stunt stuff that I did, which to me was at least similar, worse, if not more so, which didn't get the publicity. For example, the Condor Man stuff, all the stuff I did on that. That film, most people now don't even remember the movie. Whereas obviously everybody alive of every generation can remember Star Wars.
So it must be very nice to have that recognition for Star Wars, but on the other hand, perhaps a bit frustrating that other things aren't so well known or.
Yeah. For example, I did a series with Ross Kemp called Ultimate Force. We did for 4 years, and that was a lot of stunts on that. It was all about the SAS, and that was great fun. I coordinated that and had a huge stunt team all the way through all the 4 years on that. That's one that a lot of people don't recognise anymore, don't know anything about it. But although it was for TV.
Yeah. I mean, did you find working on TV better, more difficult than feature films, or is it just kind of the same?
Different scenarios. Feature films, you ended up doing less scenes in a day because you had a long run. But one thing with TV was good because you got repeat fees on television, which you didn't get in film.
Yeah.
For example, I did Only Fools and Horses.
Oh yes, yeah.
I did the 1988 Christmas special, and every year I'm still getting repeat fees out of the videos that have been, millions of videos sold every year on that series. And so that, in terms of the overall money that I've made per the amount of weeks that I put on the production, that's probably been one of the most successful of the lot, because all these years later, I'm still getting money from it. Whereas with movies like Star Wars, the stuntmen weren't on any kind of royalties, and you got paid for doing the job, and that was it.
Right. So TV contracts more lucrative in the long run.
It could very often be more lucrative. It depends on what you were on. Even at a lower level, if you did, let's say, a stunt on EastEnders, the fact that they were repeating it at the time meant that you could get a second payment, for the one stunt. Whereas movies, you just got paid up front for the one, for your performance, and you never got anything beyond that.
Yeah.
Although yes, we're in it for enjoyment and for prestige and for what in getting out of it, but at the same time, the money side of it has to count for quite a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah, because it's a living, isn't it? After all.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favourite Bond films is Octopussy. Would you have gone to India for any of that, or was it more?
No, I didn't do much on that. I can't remember what I did on that, to be quite honest.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of the stunts in there. I mean, you've got a very good train stunts and circus sequences and.
I can't remember who was stunt coordinator on that. They've changed them over the years, and I haven't worked on any of the Bonds in recent times.
Yeah. I mean, do you still watch the Bond films though, and do you still enjoy?
No, not a great deal. I can't say I've seen any of the recent ones.
I mean, I think they're still very good from a stunt point of view because they're still doing it for real as much as possible. So I think from that side of it, they're good films to still be making.
Yes. Just you move on in your as I went into coordinating, I tended to concentrate on the work that I was doing rather than the work that others were doing.
I did have a question come in about your experience on Flash Gordon. Was that any memories of Flash Gordon?
I can remember shooting. We were at Shepperton Studios on that. I remember rightly, and there were did various bits and pieces on it. There was a scene swinging out on some ropes, and swinging out and dropping down to a lower level and swinging back in, and some fight scenes as well on Flash Gordon. Yeah.
Would you have met people like Brian Blessed and?
Yes, I knew Brian quite well because I'd worked with him on several occasions. I worked with him when I was coordinating something he was on in Corfu. My Family and Other Animals.
Yeah.
He did a Sherlock Holmes movie in Devon that he was on. I can't remember what it was called. Hound of the Baskervilles.
Oh yes, yeah.
And he was in that, so I'd worked with him quite a bit over the years. Nice guy, yeah.
Oh, lovely. And Temple of Doom must have been quite an interesting film to work on, the second in
Yeah, that was because I got on so well with Harrison Ford. It was great to work on those after the Star Wars movies. The last one I did with Harrison was Patriot Games.
Oh yes, very good film.
So that was again. I was one of many stuntmen doing different things on that. Again, I think we were EMI Studios. Yeah.
Would you have been in the temple scenes and?
Yeah, the scene I can remember being thrown into the pit. By Harrison, running at him with a spear, and he grabs the spear, throws me over his head, and I crashed down into the pit. I can remember that. It was, I'd say, lots of different involvements of that kind.
And one of the films that, again, I enjoy partly for its wackiness is Top Secret. Was that interesting?
Yes, it was. I actually was asked to coordinate on that, but I didn't in the end. I can't remember why I turned it down, and Joe Powell took it on, but I ended up, he gave me a role on that. Again, I can remember that was quite fun. That was at Pinewood Studios.
Because I was talking to one stuntman who worked on it a while ago, and he said it was just something he didn't want to talk about. So I don't know whether it was a chaotic production or just difficult, or.
I don't know. I just say I turned it down. I don't know if I was involved with other things at the time. So as I say, I only came in as a performer.
Yeah. And another big film on your list that I must mention is Batman with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. Again, shot at
that was Pinewood, I think. Yeah. I'm not sure. Not sure what I did on that, to be quite honest. I think I drove the car that oh God, no way. People messaging me. I can't remember. I think I drove the car that Batman Jack Nicholson was in.
Yeah.
That was again just a few days at Pinewood.
Yeah. Because again, that's a really good film. You mentioned The Living Daylights a while ago. Do you remember anything specific about the Living Daylights stunt-wise?
No, to be quite honest.
Do you remember working, say, with Timothy Dalton and Roger Moore and? Yeah,
I can remember working with those two. I know that in one of the ones with Timothy Dalton, there was a lot of stuff in being dumped in cold water with water being poured all over set, as it were. Roger was great fun. I worked with him, of course, in the ones that I did with him, which was The Spy That Loved Me and Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
What was great about him was he was quite happy for people to be stunt doubled. He didn't have any airs and graces. I enjoyed working with him.
Oh, good. Because I think Timothy Dalton's always been seen as a more serious sort of actor.
He would have played the character very differently. Again, I haven't seen that. Don't go and see that many movies, but I can't remember seeing any of the Bond movies all the way through after the original ones that I was in.
Well, because it would have been both Dalton's films, License to Kill and Living Daylights, that you
Yeah,
both of them. Yeah, because the License to Kill has a very very dark tone compared to the other films. Did that influence perhaps the stunts and the realism that was involved?
Yeah. Again, I think Martin Grace was something I'll measure on one of them.
Oh, yeah. Martin Grace would have been Octopussy.
Yeah, right. So I did work on that one then.
And it would have been Paul Weston on License to Kill and Living Daylights.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah, odd bits and pieces. That's why it doesn't stand out in my mind. It's mostly cold water work on stages.
And would you have ever done any sort of diving stunts in terms of scuba diving or anything like that, or not that sort of?
No, actually scuba diving. Did various stuff in different productions going into water, mostly falling from a height into water.
Yeah.
High falls and high dives was one of my specialities. So I did various stunts in different productions going into water from height.
Yeah. I had an audience question come in. Did you ever work with actors who insisted on doing their own stunts? And
yes and no. Actors, a lot of them are on an ego trip. For example, Ross Kemp wanted to do most of his own stuff in Ultimate Force, but I didn't let him because you cannot risk injuring an actor. If I had a stuntman come in and do a stunt and he gets hurt, I can replace him with somebody else the next day. But when you have an actor who's playing the lead role or starring role and they get hurt, it's going to cost the production an arm and a leg in wasted time. So I always used to throw that at the actors who felt they wanted to do their own stuff. Say, you're not expendable, whereas my stunt double for you is. So then if you could appeal to their ego, as it were, why they shouldn't be allowed to do their own stunts.
I mean, do you find that there is with directors that they appreciate what you're doing, or does they sometimes get carried away and try and get the shot? Do they think that, or if so-and-so injures themselves and get somebody else in?
It depends on the director. Some leave it up to you to organise the stunts in the way you feel is best. Others have a very heavy involvement. Stanley Kubrick, for example, was somebody who definitely had his own way of doing things, and he insisted I had to do a high back fall onto a table of Clockwork Orange. And it was not something you'd be happy doing today because he didn't want any boxes and he didn't want any cuts. So I actually had to fall about 25 feet backwards onto this table, but all I could have was a mattress underneath it, and the whole thing broke and shattered. I remember getting up afterwards, and the next thing I remember was being in Kingston Hospital because I passed out as a result of concussion on that. Because people like Kubrick were very difficult to work for because they were so demanding in what they wanted.
So in terms of injuries, what was that sort of the worst one you had, or?
No. I mean, the injury. I was back on the set later in the day working again. I've actually had more injuries doing motorcycle stuff, racing motorcycles probably than doing stunts. Because a stunt is a known quantity, you eliminate as much of the risk as you can. When you're racing a motorcycle, there are unknowns, and which you can't plan for in advance.
Yeah. And it's all, so you say it's all controlled on a set. I had another question come in. Do you have a favourite TV series that you did stunts for?
Probably Midsummer Murders.
Yeah.
Because that was so long going, I was on that for 15 years.
Yeah. Because again, there's some good work on the Sweeney and the
Yeah, I mean, like things like the
professionals.
Sweeney, Professionals, again, another one I did a lot of stuff on. But that I wasn't on that as a coordinator. I did a couple of Muppet movies. The Great Muppet Caper was great fun. I really enjoyed that. A lot of stunts on that.
Yeah.
Um,
Because I had a question about how stunt work is scheduled. So, do when you do a film or TV series, are stunts scheduled to happen in a sort of, quite quickly, or do you find that you have to hang around
on what's involved in the majority of movie stunts? You have to set up and prepare and rehearse. For example, if you take American Werewolf in London, we had to do a big car crash sequence in Piccadilly Circus. And because the police would only allow us a short amount of time to do it, and then to clear everything out of the way, we had to rehearse that over and over and over a number of weeks. I'm not sure where we did rehearse it. I think it was Shepperton somewhere. Anyway, we had to plan it like a military exercise, so there were all the stuntmen that were actually involved in doing the crashes, and all those who then had to hold up the traffic to block the streets off, so there was members of the public didn't get involved. So in terms of the actual shooting, we managed to get away with doing it twice.
Yeah.
All in one night, whereas we rehearsed it for weeks for one night's shooting. That's an extreme example of planning that needed, whereas especially with a lot of TV stuff, the amount of rehearsal time you have is very limited. Same in Summer Murders, when you've got a fight scene. Unless it was quite involved, you didn't have any time to rehearse with the actors prior to shooting it. So you'd rehearse it and then shoot it. There was one, I can remember one where I had to do a sword fight routine with various actors. So I had several days of rehearsing them with a sword fight routine to make the routine look good when we shot it.
Yeah.
So it depended, it's a difficult one to answer some stunts. For example, if you're doing a high fall, if you know what you're doing, you set your rig up, you set the cameras up and everything, and you do it maybe once or twice, and then it's done and it's over. It depends on, whereas car chase sequences involve more planning and more preparation.
Yeah. And I was wondering, again, we've had a question about this. Do you have to be fearless to be a stuntman, or is it more the question of being of planning and?
Well, I would say that the best men are trained cowards rather than daredevils. Daredevil people end up hurting themselves and hurting others. As a trained coward, you minimize the risk without belittling the stunt in any way. You minimize the risk as much as you feasibly can to make it safe, so that you can do it over and over again with the same result. So the daredevil approach is not one I would recommend for stunt work.
Yeah, you need that self-awareness. You need that cautious. The plan.
It's not just your safety; it's the safety of the other people you're working with, and you've got to guarantee their safety and guarantee that if you say it's safe to do this, then that is the case.
Do you have a favourite directors and actors that you've worked with during your career?
Yes, probably again going back to Midsummer Murders, John Nettles is always one of my favourite guys. Directors, some of the directors we'd had. Richard Holthouse was great to work with. Who else? Well, was we? Trying to think of Rennie. Can't think of the second name. Rennie somebody on the inside. That's also good to work with. Going back further, nobody comes to him. Peter Ustinov, good to work with.
Oh, lovely, yeah. And you worked with him on what project was that?
On the Great Muppet Caper, and also the One of Our Dinosaurs Is Missing. He played one of the lead role in that.
Yeah. Is there anyone that you didn't like working with for any reason? Sort of perhaps they weren't sympathetic to being stuntmen. You don't have to name anybody, but perhaps just people that weren't perhaps as...
No, I can't recall anybody I particularly disliked working with. There were various stunt people, in my opinion, who did not have a good reputation, and you found that they were a bit of dead wood when you were working with them. That was, you know, they weren't up to what was required. I can remember various occasions where I'd had to step in and do a stunt because the guy that was scheduled to do it didn't come up trumps.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to name any names on that, but it was something that I was aware of.
And your swan song for Bond was GoldenEye. Again, what was your involvement with GoldenEye?
Again, you keep going back to Bonds, but I don't recall much of the work I did on the later Bonds because they were just odd days.
Bits and pieces.
I can't even recall what I did on GoldenEye. Sorry, I can't be more useful with that one.
Oh, that's okay. That's no problem. I mean, would you have encountered Pierce Brosnan or Director Martin?
Yeah, I mean, I knew Pierce very well before the Bond films because I taught him to ride a motorcycle in a film called The Fourth Protocol.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And they employed me to go down to, I think Eddie Stacey may have been producer on the stunt coordinator on them. But anyway, I had to teach him from scratch, and I brought him a little moped to start with, and then I got him a 250cc up to that, and then eventually had to ride a BMW. So I got to know him well from that point of view before doing any of the stunts. Funny enough, I did some of the stunts on Fourth Protocol, but I never worked with Pierce as a Bond.
Oh, right. Yeah.
As a James Bond.
I mean, what other actors would you have done things like that for in terms of training them special skills and you know, motorbikes, that sort of thing? Well,
Quadrophenia was a case in point where the guy who played the Chief Rocker, I'm terrible at remembering names, a famous actor, well known now, but I taught him to ride motorcycles. And also take, for example, the film Return to Oz.
Oh, yeah.
I coordinated on that, and I developed the wheeler characters. I developed the wheels, and I had to train the people up to using them, and they were like wheels on stilts on your legs and on your feet, and on your hands. And I had a whole team that I had to train up to do that. That was weeks and weeks and weeks of work, even before shooting started. So that was a combination of stunt people and actors that I would have to train up to do that. Yeah.
I just googled the cast of Quadrophenia. Got Phil Daniels, Phil Davis, Sting, Ray Winston.
Ray Winston, he was the one that I taught to ride. He had to ride a Triumph, and I can remember teaching him how to do that. And then with the mods with their scooters, not Phil Daniels, the other Phil.
Oh, Phil Davis, I think it was.
Phil Davis, yes. Yeah. I doubled him on doing a crash on a scooter, amongst other things. And funny enough, he worked on a couple of episodes of Midsummer Murders later on, and it was nice to, everybody was, when we were staying at Brighton, it was a lot of fun because the actors and the stunt people all mixed together on that and went out together in the evenings and that sort of thing. And they were a young cast. And Gareth Milne was on that. Peter Braham was the coordinator. And that was, we had a lot of fun doing that. The other film I did in Brighton was called Civvies. No, I can't remember. There was one I did in Brighton. The director was a very nice guy, but the film was not a success. Peter MacDonald. No, it wasn't Peter. No, sorry, my mind. You have to accept the fact that my Lyme disease makes my brain fog very bad on occasions on remembering the past.
Oh, you're doing very well, Colin. But I'm not sure I could remember what I was doing 10, 15 minutes ago. But I suppose because the work is so memorable at the time, that probably helps recollections. Does it feel like work, or is it kids in a candy store? Is it something you really?
I mean, it was a combination of work and pleasure. I got certainly enjoyed it. If I had my time again, I wouldn't do anything else.
Oh yeah. Well, that's lovely, isn't it? To not have any.
Certainly. With my lot, as it were.
Oh, fantastic. We couldn't think earlier who the second unit director of Empire Strikes Back was. I believe it was John Barry. Does that ring a bell?
I don't think so.
No, I think he was definitely one of the second unit directors. The only reason I mentioned his name is because he also did Superman. He was a production designer as well as being a.
He may have been a production designer. I don't think he directed. He certainly wasn't. I'm trying to think who was the director when we were out on the second unit, when we were out in Finser. But I don't think it was John Barry.
Could have been Robert Watts, perhaps.
Robert Watts was the production manager.
Yeah, production manager, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Keep thinking. I'm sure it'll come to us.
Yeah.
I think it's. It'll come to us. Another of note for your TV work is a series Red Dwarf. Does that stand out at all?
Yes, Gareth Milne was the coordinator on that. I just came in and did a couple of jobs. I can do it. Remember hanging, hanging over a big drop in some waterworks in Isleworth, I think it was, or Sunbury.
Yeah.
I didn't do a lot on Red Dwarf. I say that was Gareth.
Yeah. Because yes, you were doubling the Inquisitor character from that episode.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't have done any studio work. It would have all been just location side of it.
Yeah.
Because have you, apart from your beginnings in the theatre, did you ever do anything as either as live TV or with a studio audience or anything like that?
Occasionally, I did a series, men behaving badly, and you rehearse it during the day, and then they shoot it before a live audience in the evening, and you go in there and see if what you rehearsed with the actors was working and that kind of thing before a live audience. But I didn't do any other didn't do many theatrical productions. Yeah. Although, funny enough, in recent years, when I ended up training my dogs to do stunts, and I ended up doing the musical Annie, probably 50 or 60 productions over the years with different dogs. And so the dog training became, during the time I was working on Midsummer Murders, my dog training activities and dog filming TV stuff became quite a big part of it.
And did you also do dog training for feature films as well, or was it mainly sort of?
Yeah, it was mostly independent. Mostly I did a lot of teaching with different dogs to do different things. On Midsummer Murders, all my colleagues appeared on that in different episodes doing different things, because I trained the dogs to learn sequences. So it meant that they could shoot a whole sequence without having to do it in little cuts, because the dogs that I had would do what was required in the script, whereas a lot of animal companies would send along these dogs which would look right for the job, but were totally incapable of doing what was required, or were frightened of the bangs and the lights, and also, you know, I trained my dogs to work to hand signals so that I could get them to, for example, if a dog had to lie down at the same point in each take, I could do it from behind the camera with a hand signal, so that it was, the continuity was there.
Yeah. I've got another question. Did you prefer working on special effects movies, or those that would be deemed perhaps more realistic? So less Star Wars, more sort of Clockwork Orange, that sort of thing.
It depended. You know, every taste was different. Special effects were fine. You can work with them, and you know, but also it was a bit nice to work on stuff where special effects weren't required, where you just did it for real, as it were, car chases particularly.
Another question we've got, you mentioned that you've done some acting works, some cameos. Did you ever want to go into acting, or was it always?
No, I never really had any desire to. I mean, as a stunt man, you have to be able to act. And I did various characters. I played various characters in different things, but mostly because of the physical work that character had to do. I remember an episode of Van der Valk that we shot in Amsterdam, where I had to be chased all over the place by these various people, which involved a lot of leaping around and jumping off things. And I eventually met my end off the top of a multi-story car park. That, you know, it's much better to cast a stuntman in the role than have somebody doubling when it's such a physical role.
And another question that's come in. You've worked on lots of films that would consider to be cult classics. You mentioned, of course, Condor Man. Is there any other of your projects that you feel are underrated, or perhaps needs to be re-examined and be appreciated?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can't think of. There are various productions I worked on that were not as successful as one would have liked, and others that at the time I didn't think there would be a great success. Well, Star Wars is one, yet they turned out to be so. I can't think of anything that. There was, as I said, the one I did with what was the name of the director? Oh dear, it was down in Brighton, and that was not a success. And that was many weeks and weeks and weeks of work chasing around Brighton seafront and what have you, and doing various stunts. And that was a BBC film production, and I know that it was not received well by the BBC. And, the lighting director came in for a lot of stick because they thought it was too dark. So it rather died a death. I can't remember what it's called now.
Do you have? Was there a stunt or a type of stunt that you didn't get to do? Something that was not fulfilled in your career, or were you quite happy with everything that you did?
Well, I was always would have liked to have done more acrobatic type stuff in my younger days. A lot of things where, you know, running across rooftops and what they now call parkour, which didn't exist in those days. I would have quite liked to have done more of those kind of things. And car chase movies, car stuff always, and motorcycle stuff always been something that I would love to have done more of.
There's one wonderful parkour sequence in Casino Royale, Daniel Craig's first Bond film. I don't know whether you've seen that or not, but it's a wonderful, free running, all done for real, really, fantastic sort of 10-minute sequence. That's
yes, it was something that I, in my younger days, I would have enjoyed doing something like that. It didn't materialise, but you ended up doing what the script required. You can't empire build and do things that aren't called for simply because it's something that appeals to you.
I did ask this when I spoke to Paul West and also Gary Powell as well. How do you think that stuntmen are? Do you think there's enough recognition for stunt work? Because I find it quite odd that there isn't a.
Yeah, I think probably not. I mean, there should be a stunt Oscar, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And there should be more recognition for stuntmen. But then, of course, our job as a stuntman is to make the actor look good.
Yeah.
The more you build yourself up, then in a way you're pushing the actors down. I was never unhappy with actors going around saying, "Look at all the stunts I'm doing here," because it's part of their image and it builds it up. So I was never on an ego trip where it bothered me that actors were claiming to have done things that they actually didn't do. Because in the course of their characters, the characters ended up, doing the stuff, even if they themselves couldn't do it.
Yeah. I think you're completely right. But in the beginning, it was part of the illusion, wasn't it, that the actors were.
Yes. Somebody has a hard guy image, or the sort of person that the audience would like to think did their own stunts, and the stuntman should be happy to play that background role, and I was always happy to do that.
So when did that change? But perhaps for you, Colin, when people started to recognise you for what you were doing, and you were then going to conventions, when there must have been a shift between anonymity and now people,
Yeah, I think it's since the internet and Facebook and YouTube and things like that. I think that it's become more out in the open now, and people, I've always thought I was only the stunt double. Why do people want my signatures? They should be getting the actor's signatures, but it's part of the game that it is now, that if you worked on something, then that's enough for people these days.
Well, I think in many respects that obviously acting is hard, but stunt work is hard, and if the stunts don't work, then the film doesn't work. If the actor doesn't work, so it's all integral, isn't it, to the whole medium?
Yeah, no, I would never have thought that when I did the Star Wars movies that years and years later I would be going to conventions to sign my autograph for something that I did dubbing somebody else.
Yeah.
The way it's worked out. It's not my favourite activity, being in the limelight like that, but I'm quite happy to take the money and sign the thing.
I mean, do you find fans are very respectful? Do you like interacting with the fan community?
Up to a point, I've always been a very reserved person, and lead my own life outside the industry. I always have. And my dog training, my dog agility, I competed in for years and years and years. All my leisure activities were outside the business.
Yeah.
I'm never somebody to socialise within the business as such. In fact, it probably harmed my career to a certain extent that I never did.
And I think another interesting question that's come through. We touched on it briefly, but how do you think that Stunts has changed in the film and TV business? We mentioned health and safety's come in.
Well, health and safety plays a bigger part now. And obviously, health and safety play a bigger role now. CGI, of course, the fact that computer graphics have taken over to a large extent has diminished the value of real stunt work. I believe a stunt should be a stunt, not something that's put together in an office somewhere. And that is a change, in my opinion, has not been for the better.
No. And I think films are made differently, and TV it's more committee based, so maybe things are a bit watered down a little bit, perhaps these days.
Yeah, well, yes, you know, various people have got their irons in the fire, as it were, as far as
Hmm.
yeah, definitely. In my opinion, it's not as good as it was.
Oh,
Done, not real anymore.
I was thinking back to Empire Strikes Back. Peter MacDonald is credited as location director for the second unit, so it might have been Peter MacDonald that we were thinking of, perhaps for that one.
Yes, I may well be the case. That was the director was definitely a MacDonald, the director on this series I did at Brighton. Not Peter MacDonald. No.
I've just got a couple of questions to wrap up. What is the most difficult or dangerous stunt that you've ever been involved in?
The next one I always used to say, because I've survived all the others, but there was one I did on The Empire Strikes Back where I nearly met my end, where I had to go up hanging on the trapeze underneath the helicopter, having double Mark Hamill putting his bomb on the bottom of the walker and then dropping down into the snow. Yeah. The was on a helicopter going up into the air. Mark Wolf was controlling the helicopter. Unbeknown to us, the night before, the props people had pushed the helicopter back into this hangar because it was so cold and you didn't want it to ice up. So it was put in a hangar with heaters. And they, didn't tell us, but they caught one of the rotors on the side as they put it in and bent it. So in the next day, when I went up in the air hanging under the helicopter, it went out of control and went up to about 70 or 80 feet when I was only supposed to go up to about 40 and drop into the snow. And it went out of control to one side. And I looked and I wasn't harnessed on because I actually, no point in being harnessed on when you got to let go and drop off. And it started to swing from side to side. And I looked down and could see the unit way below, about 70 or 80 feet below, and I looked down and there were rocks all over the place. And I noticed that when it swung maximum to the left, it was pure white, whereas directly down and to the left, it was loads of rocks. So I decided I would have to let go and hope for the best. And when it swung to the left, I let go. I somersaulted through the air for what seemed like forever, and I went into this deep snowdrift only about 4 feet away from the rocks, and that was a fall from about 70 feet, so I would definitely have met my end if I'd landed on the rocks.
Yeah.
So that stands out as probably not necessarily the most dangerous, but one for circumstances which were beyond our control, which ended up making it much more dangerous than it should have been.
So that's the danger, is it's the uncontrolled elements seeping into.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, is it difficult to do stunts in cities, on streets, in locations? Is that a bit of a nightmare for a stuntman?
It's a nightmare for the locations department more than anything else. Keeping that, I can remember various occasions where inebriated members of the public wanted to get in on fight scenes and that sort of thing, and crowd control is very difficult when you're shooting a sequence in a public street. And some people took exception to being asked to stand back behind a certain thing, and so there were occasions when people got involved who shouldn't have been. For example, in the American Werewolf in London, some fella came out of an alley on a bicycle and cycled right through the middle of this whole carnage of vehicles crashing and everything. How he didn't get killed, I don't know. But that's just a point where they thought they'd have every sort of alleyway and every doorway blocked off, but this guy came out of somewhere and they hadn't anticipated it. So when you're trying to control the streets from members of the public, it can bring in added complications.
Yeah, of course. I heard a question. Have you ever considered writing your autobiography? Is that ever possible?
A lot of people have asked me that. I should have done it years ago when my brain was working properly. Unfortunately, with the Lyme disease, my memories are in a sort of fog.
Yeah.
I would have to have it ghostwritten by somebody else, but I'm not sure my ongoing health battles are such at the moment that I don't feel I got time to do something like that. If my health improves at any time, I might contemplate it. But a lot of people have asked me, and the problem is recalling so much of the stuff, and it comes back in bits and pieces, but so much of it I would forget.
Yeah. But I think what we as fans sometimes forget is not only how long ago were films like Star Wars and Bond, but also that for people like yourself, it may have just been 2 weeks' work or a few days, and therefore, the memories aren't going to be as clear.
Yes, it does. You've asked me about those Bond films, which I couldn't remember much because I only did a few days of not particularly satisfying stuff on them. And that was why, and never having seen the end products, you know, my memory of them is not good.
I mean, do you like watching the projects that you've been involved with? Do you find it difficult?
Well, it's not something I'm particularly concerned with one way or the other. I mean, if something comes on that I've worked on, I won't go out of my way to watch it. But if I've seen myself doing something, then fine, I'll say, oh yes, I remember doing that. Like in the horror hospital, somebody sent me a clip on Facebook a few days ago of somersaults I was doing on as a zombie on horror hospital, and I thought, they put it on my Facebook page, so I couldn't miss it. But things like that I can't even recall having done that, going back to me.
And are you a big film and TV fan in general? Is it?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I rarely go and see any films. I think that my love of dog training far exceeds my love of going and seeing movies.
Yeah, that's it's a great thing to be involved with, isn't it? So that leads me nicely to my final question. What is your favourite film or TV series to work on, and what is your favourite stunt? There could be different projects, of course.
Well, the Great Muppet Caper stood out because there was lots of different vehicle things, doubling the Muppets, doubling the bus, racing around Piccadilly Circus, doubling Gonzo, chased lots of near misses with other cars crashing into a hotel in Paddington, driving a 12-ton cement truck dressed as Miss Piggy late at night. And I can remember one occasion where I was shooting late at night and up and past the camera, but I had to go quite a long way down the road to turn around. And so I went down there. Another lorry was coming the other way, and it was quite a narrow road. As we were edging past each other, I looked across and said, "Thanks, mate." And he looked across and saw this large pig driving this 12-ton cement truck, and just looked absolutely startled. And when I turned around, he was still there when I went back. Things like that, and also the motorcycle stuff that I did on that. So that stood out. I would say that Midsummer Murders has great affection as being more recently and something that I was able to carry on doing long after I was actually doing stunts.
Yeah.
I'm not a great movie fan. I rarely see work that I've done. But there you are, some people live the business, I didn't.
I mean, is there a stunt that you would like to be remembered for, or something that you thought,
I'm not concerned, to be quite honest, if people remember anything or not. The Star Wars one going to win through the screen, that stands out in people's minds.
Yeah.
But I don't have any memories that I can remember a lorry turnover I did that I was particularly happy with, and various other things, individual stunts. But as I say, I've never been a great movie fan.
I mean, you're saying that you've done stunt coordinator work. Is it more difficult being a stunt coordinator in terms of you have the responsibility of other people in terms of their safety? Is that?
Yeah, it's a more encompassing role. You have more sides to it than as a performer. I particularly enjoyed performing because you were responsible for what you were doing. Yes, you were working it in with other people and what have you. But I suppose, given the choice, I'm sure I preferred performing to coordinating, but it was different involvement. The thing I hated about coordinating was doing the risk assessments.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely hated it. Like,
I do those at work sometimes. I know exactly where you're coming from on that one. We did have a final question from the audience. Someone was watching The Professionals recently and just noted there was often actors that were running off rooftops, and I think in the new Avengers, Joanna Lumley goes up a drain pipe, walks across a very sort of perilous sort of rooftop. And was it more common back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that you would put an actor there, perhaps with no wires, or was it kind of?
Oh yeah, there were less concerns in those days.
Yeah.
And obviously because there wasn't CGI, then the actors probably had to do a little bit more than they often have to do now. But they had to be supervised and had to make sure they were safe and capable of doing what was required of them. And there was I did a lot of running around on rooftops and that sort of thing, and falls from rooftops in different series over the years.
And so just to finish off, Colin, what would you say has been the best thing about a career in the movies and TV for you?
Well, being able to exploit my physical abilities was a big part of it. Being able to do things that I would have loved to do anyway and getting paid for them, doing stuff that so many things, car and motorcycle chases where we'd have an awful lot of fun between takes and off the set and that kind of thing. Really enjoyed performing.
So as you say, it didn't feel like a job. It was your passion.
It was a job, but it was also a passion. And I'd never been somebody particularly interested in success for success' sake or money for money's sake. I made a good living, and I'm happy with that. But the thing was to enjoy what you did, and I did.
Oh yeah, we should all be so lucky to find that passion and what we love. That's brilliant. Well, I just want to say thank you very much, Colin, for joining us.
Sorry, I wasn't able to remember some of the things that you brought up, but I hope that the audience have found some of the things interesting.
We covered some lovely stuff, Colin. So it was a very enjoyable evening for myself. I'm sure everybody that's watching along. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you, and good luck with everything, and maybe I'll see you at an event or something in the future.
You never know. Anyway, all the best.
All the best.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, Colin.